Hi, I'm Illène Pevec. I'm one of the co-authors of the chapter on early childhood environmental education with Derr and Louise Chawla. And today we are in a community and a school garden that involves many families in the community, all of whom have small children, in gardening together. This is an example of a situation where grown-ups and children can learn together. And I hope it will prove to be an interesting backdrop for some of our discussion of early childhood education and environmental education. Environmental education involves young children in learning both about the built environment and the natural environment in their cities, in their towns, and in the country. There is a focus in environmental education on children's agency. That is, it is about action. It's about children having the opportunity to do things that have a beneficial effect on their environment. Children learning how to investigate questions they might have themselves about the environment. And of course, a garden gives children a chance to do this in a very dynamic way because they observe the rotation of the seasons, the planting of the seed in the spring, and then in the fall they start to see the seeds forming in the very plants that they planted themselves in the early spring. It's an important place to investigate questions about life, and environmental education is about forming a relationship with the whole living ecosystem of the earth. Early childhood is usually defined as the age from 3 to 8. It could be just as easily defined from birth to 8, because from the moment a baby comes into the world, their senses are deeply attuned to what they see going on around them. It is a formative period for learning the very basic relationships of society and also for the natural living things that are around them. So children who have the opportunity to be out of doors with their parents see a relationship forming by all members of their family with the natural environment, whether it's in a city park or their backyard or a community garden like this one. John Dewey, one of the great founders of progressive education in the United States and perhaps one of the first philosophers of education in the United States, indeed used gardens at his laboratory school at the University of Chicago because he believed in engaging children in all aspects of the practical nature of life, from gardening to cooking to working in the wood shop to sewing. Maria Montessori of Italy, who worked with the poorest children of Rome and developed a philosophy of education of engaging children in practical tasks to learn not only how to do things, but how things work, also used gardens. And Reggio Emilia is a more modern manifestation of this, a movement that began in northern Italy and is spreading all over the world to engage children very actively in shaping their communities. Children can learn the history and the culture of a place, of their city and their town as they visit the streams that might be in the city or the river and learn what happened there. For instance, I grew up in a town called Denver, Colorado, and Cherry Creek, which was a short bike ride from my house, was the start of the gold rush into Colorado. And so from the time I moved there, when I was 7, I was in a sense engaged in the history of my own city and my own state, in my own ventures by myself to that very stream to gather tadpoles each spring and bring them home in a jar and watch them turn into frogs before I let them go a little later in the summer once they were frogs back in Cherry Creek. I learned a cycle of life because I was curious about life, as are all children, and luckily I had access to a stream. There is a very large movement all over the world to reacquaint children with the nature of their places. And environmental education is a formal part of that, integrated into the schools. But it is also in organizations like the Scouts and the Guides worldwide. I remember vividly when I was 7 and I went to my first brownie camp in a city park in Denver, and we learned the names of the different cloud formations. And today we have cumulus clouds floating over our heads. And so those of us who are adults working with children have an opportunity to turn everything around us, from the cottonwood fluff flying through the sky, showing how seeds are dispersed, to the cumulus clouds of summer bringing the rain, to talk about the environment with children and simply enjoy it, because it is all about enjoying it.